everyone. Welcome back to Undercolor, a podcast from the UTA College of Architecture, Planning, and Public Affairs, where we discuss with faculty working in underserved communities their amazing work. And today we're so lucky to have Letora Anderson, Assistant Professor in Landscape Architecture. Hi, Letora.
Hello.
Why don't you tell us about what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm Assistant Professor in the Landscape Architecture program here at UTA. My background is in landscape architecture and planning. A lot of my research and experience focuses on cultural landscapes, the systems that lead to area decline and gentrification, and also the preservation of a sense of place.
Well, that's exciting because I know that some of those issues are very connected to underserved communities. So could you tell us about some of the communities you're working in?
So currently we're working and we're looking at the Johnson Creek project, which I'll talk about in a second. But one of the things that I want to say is that there was a community that I worked with in the past where they were experiencing some disinvestment and decline. And one of the things that I've realized through research is how do we end up with communities that are underserved, but also have this extreme amount of disinvestment in their area? How does decline happen? It's just not something that is reflective of the people, it's reflective of some systems that are happening within their environment. And so one of the things that I realized and deduced was that there's a series of kind of attributes and elements that lead to decline, and a lot of it has to do with disinvestment. Disinvestment can stem from either in the past when we had redlining, which we still see remnants of that today. We see that in South Dallas. If you look at mapping, I've done some research to where those areas that were redlined are still very much, we have higher poverty levels and also issues within infrastructure. The same is within other communities is where we see decline and we have these environmental injustices occurring because there's no investment, so stormwater issues are occurring. The infrastructure for streets, trails, walkability are not there. And then also what comes with decline as well is the exodus of businesses and resources like grocery stores that communities need. And so just taking that experience from the past and actually engaging communities where I've said, okay, community, citywide, what are some things that you notice? Let's do a SWOT analysis. And for me to see that a community will say, hey, I notice a difference between my part of town and the other part of town. I notice that they have better streets. I notice that they have access to Wi-Fi. I notice that they have community centers and it's not occurring where I am. So disinvestment is something that individuals also see and feel within their community. And so that became very important to me with my research, but also with my classes for students to understand that cyclical neighborhood change does occur, but we also have to realize that there are various things that are in play when a community is experiencing that. So with that said, I'm currently working with a studio. It's comprised of urban design and landscape architecture students, and they're looking at the Johnson Creek corridor. And currently we're in the process of analyses, and students are really looking at the current land use, the current neighborhoods adjacent to Johnson Creek, and kind of those issues with the erosion and also the kind of, I would say, changes along Johnson Creek based on where you are within the neighborhood and where you are within the city. And so with that, we're just trying to understand how is this affecting these small businesses, how is the flooding affecting these residents within these communities.
That's interesting. I am focusing on environmental justice in this series of podcasts. And so one would think that along Johnson Creek, especially in a community like Arlington, that there wouldn't be any examples of environmental injustices. So could you talk about some of the things that you and your students are finding that kind of fit into that category?
Yes. So we're earlier in the analysis phase, but there are a number of things that the students have been able to identify. One of them is just the result of development and development practices that really should have protected the creek. And so because there was no protection, the residents themselves don't have the protection. And so that is one thing when we're seeing residents probably losing parcel. Basically, part of their property is eroding away, so that is affecting the property owner. But also issues of flooding that is happening downstream that are near parks and residents, right? And so if you see, what we notice is that there's improvements that have occurred north, but as you start to get down further south down Dawson Creek, we begin to see these inconsistencies along the riparian zone. We begin to see areas where it's been channelized and there's concrete, and all of these things actually aid to flooding and issues with the stormwater. And so also, one of the things that some of the students have seen is that we've actually taken Johnson Creek and we've actually looked at similar creeks within the Metroplex and how that separation between the residential land use and the creeks are treated. And you can see that there's a vast difference between the way that they've been maintained over the years.
Interesting. So how are you, or are you coming up with, I know it's still early in the semester, or will you come up with solutions or approaches that communities within this area could use to actually empower themselves to address these issues, or empower themselves to work with the community, the city, or who is responsible, the Corps and the agencies that are responsible for the creek? Or is that in your plan?
One of the things that the students have done is they've basically separated into different types of analyses, looking at impermeable versus permeable surfaces, looking at the type of soils, because all of that affects permeability of stormwater or infiltration of stormwater. We've looked at land uses and all of these different things. We've picked, we looked at brownfields as well. We've picked all of these different sources and issues or constraints and pulled them out on a map. And what we noticed were three main areas that were concentration areas that could be focused on that had the most amount of issues. The hope would be that, yes, the students can come up with some type of analyses mapping. And I feel like the best way to gain momentum when engaging the community is if we also engage the city staff, and if we in any way possible can get one elected official on board. That is one thing in my experience that I've realized really helps with momentum to really get kind of a grassroots project started, is to get the cities kind of buy-in, but also get an elected officials buy-in. That is really key. And it's the collaboration between the public admin, the planning, and the designers in conjunction with helping the citizens move forward. Because a lot of times what you see is within these communities, we have educated, smart, intelligent people who already know what's happening within their community. They just need the collaboration in order to help move it forward.
So you speak with authority because you were the city planner for Greenville, Texas. So the thing I also like is that you're actually giving the community a tool. So you and the students aren't like coming up with this is the solution, but you're empowering by saying, here's all this information, here are the issues, and then helping them make the connection to the people in power to actually make what should happen, based on their will and their wishes. That's really wonderful. Well, thank you. Before we go, is there anything else you'd like to, leave us with, or any exciting research you're working on, or project, or any last thoughts for our audience?
I guess my last thought would be, within the practice, landscape architecture is very important. I came into the field excited because of the wide range of opportunities within landscape architecture to focus on kind of a micro scale, small garden park project, to also looking at a large connected system like a watershed, like Johnson Creek, like a campus, residential community. And so, one of the things that I just want to stress is that we always remember that even if we're working in an underserved community, it doesn't mean that they themselves are not able to take charge and kind of make decisions about their communities. A lot of times in these underserved communities, we have former council people, we have people who were in really great positions, and we have a mix of demographics. And so if we just take their feedback also, because they know the land, in conjunction with our analysis, we'll have a more of a best practices approach. Because one thing you want to have is community buy-in, and you also want to have the buy-in of city staff and representatives. That is the way to really see a project through to the end and ensure that it's actually utilized and successful.
Thank you so much. I really love that, because often when people hear underserved communities, they think that there's something lacking in the community. No, it's lacking in the service that's given to the community. So thank you so much. And thank you for joining us for Undercolor. We'll be back.